So in this session, we are going to address activity-based management. And now, activity-based management is application of activity-based costing. So we're also going to review activity-based costing. And as a matter of fact, in several exam papers, we have seen this examined. So as usual, we'll look at some of the system for customer care, plus the questions that you used to have in PM, where you would show results under activity-based costing and the traditional costing system, and then you do a comparison. But the two really was now ABM. 2016, quite a comprehensive question, which I encourage you to really go through. It starts off by talking about part A1, advise the CEO how activity-based costing could be implemented, basically the steps involved in activity-based costing. Part 2, assess whether it may be more appropriate to use activity-based costing in timber and steel divisions. So here we're talking about which division would have been a better candidate for the application of activity-based costing. Now really what is at the center of this paper comes in part B, advise the CEO how activity-based management could be used to improve business performance in the company. So really part B is what this paper is all about, how activity-based management can be used as a tool for performance management beyond the traditional approaches. In June 2019, again, we saw another question. Part A, advise the CEO how activity-based management could help improve the strategic performance of the company. Again, we're going to be able to identify here the benefits of ABM in performance management. And part B was talking about the limitations of using this approach to the company. So then ABM is one of the models, one of the 5 models on this paper, which bring an additional perspective to performance management beyond just a traditional approach, especially to accounting for overhead. So it's a tool that you can use to improve company profitability. But as we have said, we're going to review activity-based costing also in our session. So then, what is activity-based costing? Well, activity-based costing really gives us an alternative approach to traditional absorption costing in accounting for overheads. So activity-based costing does not change our accounting for direct costs such as direct labor, direct materials. No, it just brings an additional perspective, how else we could account for overheads in a much more accurate way. Some of the key ideas behind ABC is that ABC involves the identification of the factors which cause the cost of major organizations' activities. So here we're saying that we need to identify the major activities that the organization has and what is it that drives the costs within these activities. And after we've done so, then the support overheads are charged to products on the basis of their usage of the factors that cause the overheads, or we charge overheads based on the cost drivers. Now, let's do a quick recap of traditionally how do we account for overheads. Just to remind you, because your questions expect you to comment, to contrast with what happens under the traditional approach. So I'm sure I remember those steps in traditional absorption costing, where we identify overhead cost element, we come up with a budget for each one of the elements, and then we start allocating costs to departments or cost centers. Some of the costs are apportioned, and the costs from the service departments are reapportioned. Then you've got overhead absorption rates, then you absorb and may have under or over absorption. So the question is, out of this traditional process, which one may be necessary for this paper? Do we need to know, to revise everything? No. For this paper, we need these two. We may have to calculate overhead absorption rates and use them to absorb the overheads into products, into um, customers, into cost objects. And then after you have calculated overhead absorption rates, then you do the actual absorption. So those two are what you need from the traditional process. The other items, not for this paper. Now, in one of the questions there on top, we noticed that students had to assess where it would have been more appropriate to use the ABC approach. So then we could get the answer from this slide, the reasons for the development of ABC. Why was ABC developed? So some of the features you would look for in situations where you can use ABC include one, where we've got a broad range of products, different products, not just a single product. And these products also should have varying levels of complexity or features. Some are very complicated, some are very basic. If you have such a situation, ABC would help to attribute the cost correctly in relation to the product complexity. Also, one thing you can look for is high levels of overheads. ABC was developed and is appropriate for environments where a larger proportion of the costs are really overheads. Thirdly, traditionally, overheads were associated with labor activity, but now we argue that labor activity has become a smaller proportion of our production environment. So therefore, due to reduction in labor activity or labor as a percentage of production, there's been need for better methods of absorbing overheads. If you're working in a very competitive environment, you can't get your price wrong. But what's the starting point in getting the price right? It's the cost. You need an accurate cost base. So if you're in a very competitive environment, we normally argue that it's better to revisit your costing, use ABC so that you can have an accurate cost base on which you can calculate the price. Uh, Also, traditionally, information processing was quite expensive, and methods such as ABC would have been very suitable. But now we are saying information processing is highly accessible, it's also not as costly. Therefore, it's possible for us now to embrace methods such as ABC, and then you can use them for cost analysis and cost allocation and absorption. So then, what are some of the major ideas behind ABC? The major ideas are one, activities cause costs. So it's not departments, it's not cost centers, but it's activities. So what causes demand for activities? Why do you have activities? Producing products create demand for activities. So activities come because of production. And therefore, costs in ABC are assigned to products on the basis of their consumption of those activities. A particular product makes greater use of activities as reflected by the cost drivers, then we say more costs must be charged. So costs are charged on the basis of consumption of the activities by every product, by every cost object. We had a question on top there in 2016 says advise on how you could implement ABC. So to implement ABC, we've got steps here. Number one, you identify an organization's major activities. Number two, you identify the factors which determine the size of activity cost or cost driver. So you find the cost driver for each one of the activities. And those activities that have similar cost drivers, what do? We merge them and create cost pools. And after we have got cost pools now, we can divide the cost in every cost pool by number of cost drivers, find the cost per driver. And once we have the cost per driver, then we can charge cost to products on the basis of utilization of cost drivers. So you look at the number of cost drivers attributable to a particular product, and then you charge the overhead cost accordingly. Sometimes we may have The challenge with identifying activities in the ABC environment. So one of the models, one of the approaches to ask yourself, what are the unit level activities? Activities that we do per each unit that we produce. What are batch level activities? Activities that we undertake for a batch. For instance, machine setup is done for a batch of product. Um, ordering. Ordering of materials is done for a batch of products. Product level activities, you ask yourself for each particular product, what are the specific things that we do? So for a product category, activities that you undertake, sometimes it could be marketing activities or other related activities, we're going to uh, use that as the activity. Facility level activity, those activities that we carry out for the place from which we work, such as cleaning, such as rent, and all those. So this model can help you identify activities in your working environment. So how does ABC compare to absorption costing? Well, absorption costing mainly uses two bases for absorbing costs, labor hours or machine hours. ABC uses several cost drivers to reflect the complexity of the modern business environment, but also the complexity of the products that we produce. And there's an argument that the absorption costing system tends to underallocate cost to low volume products. So low volume products are normally allocated the lower cost. High volume products, sometimes though basic and less complicated, tend to be allocated more costs. So absorption costing is volume based, and we're saying that's wrong. We must look at the product complexity and charge overheads based on how complicated, how much of activities a particular product does consume. So what are the advantages of ABC? Well, ABC recognizes the complexity of modern business environment by using what? Multiple cost drivers. It facilitates understanding what drives overheads by identifying cost drivers. It goes beyond the traditional factory flow. It's concerned with all overheads, not just those in the factories. And ABC may lead to much more competitive pricing of our products. Criticisms: not all arbitrary cost apportionment is eliminated. You may have to apportion costs between activities. It's not easy to identify activities. And can a single cost driver explain all costs within a cost pool? Not necessarily so. There are also implementation and maintenance cost of activity-based costing system like any other costing or any other system. And sometimes ABC may be introduced as a fashion. You may find that a particular organization may not benefit as much compared to the cost of managing and establishing ABC. So in such situations, you say such companies may not benefit fully. In the next session now, we're going to look at ABM.